I'm here. I've made it. It's Wednesday. I'm sorry. I know I said I'd have your video Monday night or Tuesday morning. I just don't know how this week slipped away so fast, you know? If the rest of my life moves as quickly, it's going to be really sad. Here's to things slowing down. I seem to have some trouble with my camera. It's getting really blurry, so I'm going to try and sit still. We'll see how that goes. I tend to move around a lot. So if it blurs, I'm sorry. Just keep listening. So I want to talk to you about your discussions first. So before I just go over some of the discussions and blogs, I'm sorry, discussions and blogs. Before I go over them, I want to encourage all of you to take a little bit more time when you're writing your discussions and your blog posts to really revise and edit, and especially to make things nice and smooth and seamless, like adding transitions, making sure you're not starting your sentences with the same word over and over and over again. Just adding some diversity in your language and just smoothing things out. Not that there is anything necessarily wrong with them, but they are a little choppy in some cases. And what's nice about the discussions and blogs is they give us an opportunity to practice our writing before it really counts. You know, so right now, essentially, you're getting the points just for doing the work. But in the future, when we start working on our papers soon, not in this module, but soon, you know, I will be looking for that sort of smooth writing with transitions and, you know, a diversity of word choice. So it's nice to start working on that now. Also, I want to encourage all of you to start using concrete examples from the text. So a lot of your discussions and blogs had really great ideas. However, there weren't any examples from the text. So if you say something like, you know, the yellow wallpaper uses the color yellow as a symbol for infancy, right? Because some people think that the color yellow, you know, it's like a nursery color, often like little babies are wrapped up in little yellow blankets, you know, it's little, you know, baby chicken, you know, it's often associated with like small infant things. So rather than just saying that, show me how that's evident in the text. Say, for example, then give me a quote. So anytime you make a claim, you create an argument about the text, you have to support it with an example from the text. I will definitely be looking for this in your essays. So get into the habit in your discussions and your blogs of using textual evidence all the time. If you make a claim, prove it, right? Every single claim you make must have evidence from the text. So don't forget that. It's really important that you start using textual evidence. And again, it's not that you did anything wrong in your blogs or discussions. We're just learning how to write for literature. So textual evidence is really important. What I've done is I have two sections of English 110 for OAP. So I've just taken some samples from both classes that I'll share with you. I kind of randomly selected these, so it's not like in any particular order, and it's not, you know, ranked or anything like that. But I wanted to just share different posts with my classes, so that way you can see what other people are thinking, because it's often really cool to realize it's not just you and your classmates talking about this stuff. There are other people at the same time also reading and thinking about the same things. And it's not just, you know, in English 110, it's not just at UNCW. You know, people all over the world at some point are reading these things. The pieces of literature that we read are really famous. So it's kind of nice to see what other people are thinking and know that you're not just here, you know, by yourself reading this for some English class that some crazy lady's making you read. I mean, I am crazy. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so I just want to share a little bit from the discussions and blogs. So first, it comes from the blogs, and this is from, I'm sorry, it's Anna or Anna. I'm sorry, I don't know which one it is, but Anna Garcia. She says, I believe the yellow wallpaper resonates with so many people because it deals with the disease that many suffer from. It also shows how treatment for mental illness in women was handled in the past and makes us realize how far we've come. I also found it relatable to the society we live in now. Funding for mental illness is declining and hospitals are overcrowding with mental health patients. I think it exposes the reader to think about mental illness and treatment availability. And this is pretty cool because mental illness is definitely something that is still an issue in culture. And in relationship to the yellow wallpaper, if we're thinking about women, women are more commonly diagnosed with mental illness and they're more likely to be medicated for mental illness. So more women than men take anti-anxiety pills and antidepressants than men do. So this is definitely still a relevant story. And that's what's so cool about literature is that it's often timeless, right? Thank God that we're not locked in a room anymore in the rest cure. But mental health and women's issues are still really relevant topics. So I like Anna, sorry, that you mentioned mental illness issues in the United States, or well, I guess I should just say current culture now, because it still is an issue. And how do we handle mental illness? Are our treatment methods appropriate? How do we fund those things? So that's really cool. So I'm glad that you were able to make that connection. If that isn't something you thought about, just give yourself some time, today, tomorrow, while you're driving or whatever, and just think about like, hey, the story of the yellow wallpaper, how is it still relevant to mental health in the United States now? Kaylee Denton said in her blog, and I just have one sentence that I highlighted here. I believe the story of an hour by Kate Chopin resonates with many readers, but mostly women. And yes, that is true. It often resonates with women more than men. But I think what's super important is that men still read this, right? So not that I'm trying to make this a male female issue. It just so happens that almost everyone wrote about the yellow wallpaper. But I find that in my regular English 110 classes that are often younger people, I don't know how old you guys are, but my seated traditional English 110 are often full of like 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And the girls read the yellow wallpaper. They're like, super messed up, They kind of get it and it resonates with them. The guys' minds are like, they're blown, like they can't believe that these sorts of things happen in history and that women were locked in rooms for the rest cure and these like basically punishments for what's considered hysteria. So I think it's really important that we keep talking about these issues because the response from those students really to me indicates that we still aren't talking enough about it. I don't know. I'll let you be the judge of that. But I think that it resonates with women because women are women and they get the story and they kind of know the history. And they may have had, I doubt in modern culture have had experiences with the rest cure, but they may have had similar situations, were being diagnosed or doctors trying to medicate them. I don't know. But I think everyone's experiences are very different. But I think the response to this story suggests we still have more work to do. Shifting to Story of an Hour, Dory Pine said, the story of an hour is a short story that symbolizes the theme of freedom and discovery of oneself. This is a timeless theme that can be discussed over any time period. In the story, Mrs. Mallard is first described as a fragile woman who is distraught her husband has passed. It is not uncommon to read literature that depicts women as unstable, fragile creatures who depend on their husbands. The story begins to make a breakthrough, however, when Chopin references Mrs. Mallard sitting in an armchair, facing the open window, and realizing that she is free from her husband. She takes in the beauty surrounding her and the feeling of freedom freedom overcomes her as she realizes she now has only to live for herself. This is the most important part about the story because Mrs. Mallard is transformed from a meek, dependent wife to a self-assured, independent woman. I like that phrase, self-assured. Although this story was written in the 1800s, it can represent courageous women in many situations and time periods. This transformation can represent historic women who fought for freedom all over the world, women who have the courage to leave unsafe situations, everyday working women, women who stand up to their bosses for unequal treatment, and even women who marched all over the world just last week. I love that super recent reference. That's really cool. So the more you can start making connections to really current events, the better things are. That's why we read this stuff, right? So yeah, the story of an hour can relate to the experience of women from, the moment it was written until now. But it's really cool to be able to see the connection between this story and things that just happened last week. It's pretty cool. This story represents all women and their discovery of freedom and this discovery of oneself. This story depicts that self-discovery looks different for everyone, but that the end result of freedom is empowering to those fortunate enough to feel it. I really love that this story depicts that self-discovery looks different for everyone. and I guess maybe this might be a little bit off topic, but I hope that's something you find in this class, that what my self-discovery through literature looks like will be different than yours. And what your self-discovery through this literature is will be shaped different than what someone else in your class or in the other section of One Time will look like. That there is no right or wrong way to find self-discovery as long as it is your own, and that it speaks to your truth, whatever that is. So that's really cool. So that was nice. Thank you for sharing that. From discussion 2, so we're shifting gears a little bit. The yellow wallpaper seemed to be pretty popular, and so did the story of an hour. Those tend to be the most popular readings I assign in this semester. They're just pretty timeless. They're pretty interesting. And often, if the class is mostly women, they tend to like it too. But shifting gears a little bit into the birthmark, I love this story. So sometimes I actually read this story to my yoga class. So like while they're holding poses and sweating and probably praying to like get out of whatever posture I have them in, I read this story to them because it's a different conversation for a different day. But Nathaniel Hawthorne and his contemporaries were actually yogis, which is super, super interesting. One day I hope to teach a class about that. But I read the birthmark to them. So I love the story. Anyway, so discussion 2A. Oh no, I don't have the name on here. I'm sorry, I don't have your name, but you know who you are. The main theme in Hawthorne's The Birthmark is Elmer's obsession with perfection. The author did a good job presenting Elmer's obsession with Georgiana's birthmark. First, he makes subtle remarks about the birthmark, which escalates to it as the only thing keeping her from being perfect. Then he starts to insist he has a way to remove it with science and hopes she will agree to have it removed. She does not agree right away, but Elmer is persistent and continues to complain about how awful her birthmark is until Georgiana finally gives in to have it removed. I have 2 favorite parts of this story. I like that. The first is when Elmer's assistant, Aminadab, says if Georgiana were his wife, he would not remove it. He saw her beauty and spoke up for her. I also like Elmer's weird dream about removing Georgiana's birthmark with a knife until it reached her heart. This should have been a sign to him that indeed she would die and learn to love her imperfection. The part of the story that I like the least is the ending. Yeah. Georgiana died trying to please her husband. This is sad. He should love her for her and not for a flaw that was really not even a flaw according to other men from her past. The book relates to everyday life. This is the moment. The book relates to everyday life because our society is obsessed with perfection. The perfect face, the perfect body, the perfect life. I am reminded to embrace imperfections, and by doing so, you can see the deeper beauty of the soul which does not perish. I love that so much. So I really like this because my nameless author, I'm so sorry. You're from, I think, my 803 section. I'm sorry, I don't know. But I really like this because what happens here, there's this discussion of the parts of the story that were interesting, but how it's relevant to today. So Hawthorne was writing this stuff a long time ago, but definitely the idea of perfection in the body is not gone at all. And what's cool is that we can use this story to recognize that we're still struggling with these ideas of being perfect, but that we can change our own thoughts about that. I'm reminded to embrace imperfections, and by doing so can see the deeper beauty of the soul. That's so cool, right? So I really like that this author was able to take the story and make some meaning of it in his or her own life. That's awesome. If there's really one thing you get out of this semester, it's that I want you to be able to find meaning for yourself in this, right? That self-assertion, what this means to you. I want it to be really unique to your experiences and not just change the way that you write, right? But change the way you think about the world around you and how you feel about yourself. That's really cool. So nice work. These were really interesting. I'll do this next time too. I'll try to pick different people and I'll try to give everyone credit. I'm sorry. One thing that I also wanted to talk about, which has nothing to do with your module, I just had a conversation with a colleague the other day, and we were talking about the OAP class because she was asking me how it was going. And we were talking about the role of literature in a nursing program. And I was reminded of a time in my own life when it was really nice to have someone in the medical profession know literature. So many years ago, I was on an antibiotic, minocycline, and you might know about it. And minocycline can cause a really rare side effect called pseudotumor cerebri. So you may know what this is, you may not, I'm not sure. But if you don't, so essentially what happens in pseudotumor cerebri is the brain produces excess brain fluid, and then it starts to put pressure on the brain and in the optic nerve and in your ears. And it's just excruciating, right? And my vision was like fluttering because the optic nerve was swollen. I had too much pressure on the brain. I couldn't hear because there was too much pressure on my eardrums. And so I had the worst headache ever my entire life. It was just terrible. And so the body responds as if you have a tumor. It is not fun. So long story short, it took 9 spinal taps to remove the fluid from my brain and my spinal, you know the language, my spine. I'm sorry. This thing, you know, the fluid does this. Sorry, I'm an English teacher. I'm not a medical professional. But 9 spinal taps is not fun, and it's really stressful, and it's scary, you know, having pressure on your brain and not being able to see well or to hear anything. So once things were getting a little bit better, and I saw a different neurosurgeon who ended up just doing another spinal tap. While I was in there, you know, getting the spinal tap, he was really calm, and he said, "So what do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm in graduate school." And he said, "What are you studying?" And I said, "Literature." And he was like, "Oh, interesting. My favorite book," and then started talking to me about these really great stories about literature and how he got really wound up with like Lord of the Rings, and he ended up like, I don't know, all this crazy stuff. He ended up like getting into these like Lord of the Rings book circles, and then he was really invested in some other book series. I can't remember what it is now. And how he ended up writing to the author, and the author wrote back, and they shared ideas about the literature back and forth. I mean, it must have been eternity ago if they were handwriting letters, you know, but they were like sharing these ideas back and forth. And before I knew it, my spinal tap was over. So the reason I share that with you is because if you are wondering, like, why in the world are we reading this stuff? Like, what does this have to do with anything? Often humanities programs in liberal arts schools like UNCW, they teach the well-rounded, diverse education so we can relate to others. You will have patients like me who are English teachers who might be in a position where they're really not feeling well, and they might be a little scared, like, I don't like going to the doctor. My dad's a doctor, and I think I just like heard too much or something as a child, and it's scared me. I don't know. I hate going to the doctor. But when the doctor can relate to me, it just makes the experience better. And the same is true for nurses, because I mean, you guys know that nurses are the ones who do most of that work anyway, you know, like relating with the patient and stuff. So it's a nice opportunity for you to learn some new stuff. So you have that in your tool belt. So when you do have a patient who just needs some small talk in the middle of a procedure, or who's just hanging out waiting for some test results or something, you have something to talk about. You can relate. And I've never forgotten that doctor. I've forgotten his name. I've forgotten the name of the hospital I was at, but I've never forgotten that experience. And I was so, so grateful for it. I remember coming back to my English professors and like saying like, "Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. This doctor did this. We were talking about literature, you know." So it's just a really nice thing for you to think about. So if you're finding a difficult, or if you're having a difficult time relating to this material or finding relevance in it, at least try to embrace it so you can use it in your career from just bedside manner to see your patients as whole people. I'm super glad that my colleague and I had that conversation, because I'd actually forgotten about it, because it's been a long time ago. I think it's been like more than 10 years now since I had that pseudotumor cerebri. Thank God, that was not cool. Hope that never happens again. But anyway, so just think about that. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. I think a lot of the little kinks with the modules have been worked out. But like I said in the email, as we encounter problems, we shall solve them. That's life. So have a wonderful day. I will talk to you soon. Bye.